Did you ever lose hope during the whole time you were there? You were there how many years?
6 years and 3 months. And Joe, I didn't think we were going to get out alive.
What were your first impressions on landing in Vietnam?
Well, I remember that very, very clearly, Joe. The sights that I saw were United States Air Force and Marine Corps airplanes taxiing and taking off with their combat loads of bombs, rockets, napalm, and I thought to myself, I'm finally here. This is the war zone. This is what you've always wanted. You're here.
And what was your daily routine like when you were flying nights?
Well, I started flying missions on August the 22nd. I got shot down on November the 22nd. And so if you looked at how many days that is, that's 92 days, and I flew 87 missions.
You were taken straight away to the Hanoi Hilton.
Yes, I was taken to the Wallow prison. Right.
Yeah.
Maison Centrale.
And they trucked you down there.
Right. They threw me unceremoniously into the back of a truck, blindfolded, handcuffed, bound hand and foot, and just boom, threw me in the back of a truck.
Describe the interrogations that you underwent personally.
Well, the first one was really the only one. They asked me what my target was, and I could not, under any circumstances, tell them what my target was. The method that we used for communicating was the 5x5 tap code. Now, the funny thing is, when I was being interrogated on that first day, and I was being asked all these questions, and I wouldn't give the answers that the guy wanted, and he went out to go get his hooligans to torture me. I'm sitting there by myself, and I'm looking at this table with all these scratches in it, and I look down, and here's the tap code scratched into the table. And
in the interrogation room.
Right in the interrogation room, and it says POWs learn this code. And I'm dumbfounded, you know?
Were you, at any point during your captivity, were you tortured?
Well, that first day, yes. And one time when I got caught trying to pass a note, I was a little bit too bold, and they caught me, and they beat me up on that particular occasion. And they tossed me into a room, actually, that didn't have a door. They had to crawl in through a window, and I wound up right next to John Sidney McCain.
What was your reception like from family and friends when you finally got home?
My hometown was something else. There was a mob outside my house. I mean, it was the street was absolutely blocked. You couldn't drive through there. It was just wall-to-wall people all over the place. You said list of positive lessons learning wisdom. One of them is never give up. Never give up. That's why the POWs survived. The VC were never going to beat us, no matter what. They could kill us, but they were never going to beat us.
The main facts about the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War began as a regional conflict and became one of history's worst humanitarian catastrophes. It also changed the way that wars are fought and gave birth to a peace movement that is strong today. Since 1954, a proxy war had been brewing in South Asia. Communist guerrillas backed by North Vietnam, the USSR, and China, known as the Viet Cong, had been fighting the Western-backed South. The Viet Cong wanted to unite the country under one socialist flag. With the forces of the South losing the war and fearing communist expansion, the USA entered the conflict to help fight the Army of the North. The fighting quickly escalated, and successful operations turned the tide of the war in the Viet Cong's favor. By 1967, there were more than 500,000 American troops in Vietnam. In the USA, the anti-war movement was growing. Originally seen as communist sympathizers, this small group grew into a popular protest movement. as ordinary Americans became angry about the deaths of soldiers and civilians, and the shocking reports about the military's use of napalm and the toxic herbicide Agent Orange. After the deaths of 4 student protesters in 1970, public opinion turned against the U.S. government, and it found itself fighting a war on 2 fronts. The failure to win hearts and minds at home eventually led to the USA's withdrawal. Almost 60,000 American personnel had been killed, and over 150,000 had been wounded. The conflict was a political disaster for the USA, both at home and overseas. Although technically a victory for the North Vietnamese, up to 500,000 civilians had been killed. The total amount of casualties, both civilian and military, is believed to be over 3 million. Both sides had committed war crimes. The ripples of Vietnam can still be felt today. Such huge losses mean that, even now, the USA is unwilling to commit ground troops to conflicts. But if one positive lesson was learned, it was that ordinary people would no longer tolerate the loss of innocent lives in their names. This is a direct result of the peace movement that lives on throughout the world today, stronger than ever.